Hello everyone, I'm here today to talk a little bit about the Booktube Prize. So the Booktube Prize is a prize that is organized by Robert at Barter Hordes, and basically it's trying to get a sense of what the Booktube community and the social media bookish community thinks about books. So how it works, there are 4 rounds, and every round there are a certain amount of judges that are booktubers or booktube commenters or any way active in the bookish community, and these people judge these 6 books. They have to rank them from 1st to 6th, and Robert collects all that data and then come up with the top 3 that go to the next round. And then so this group of 48 books, it's half every round, and at the end we get a winner. And this year we got a non-fiction category, but the fiction category has been going on for 2 years now. And this year I was a judge for both fiction and non-fiction. I wanted to talk a little bit about my thoughts on how it is to be a judge and what I liked and didn't like, and a bit of the results as well, because the results just came up a few days ago. So the winner for the Booktube Prize for fiction this year was Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, and the non-fiction winner was Know My Name by Chanel Miller, which I'm actually quite happy about. None of them were my first choices, but I liked both of those books quite a bit, so I'm happy that they both won. Congratulations to the authors. And yeah, I was especially happy with the fiction results because we get the top 3. So Girl, Woman, Other was the first, and then it was 10 minutes 38 seconds in the Strange World by Elif Shafak, which was my top pick. And then we got Woman Talking by Miriam Toews, which was my second choice. So I was really, really happy to see that my top 3 choices were actually the top 3, even though not exactly the order I wanted them to be, but I was expecting Girl, Woman, Other to win because everybody loves that book. So yeah, I was quite happy with that. In non-fiction, it was Know My Name, and then it was Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe or something like that. I will put the author somewhere so that you know. But I actually really, really love that book. I read it in the first round of the Booktube Prize, and I really loved that. And I was really happy to see that it made it to the top 3, because I felt like most of the non-fiction was very focused on social issues, and the topic was a very, very big thing into the voting for some people. And I also think it is important to recognize non-fiction that it's just fun and it's just out of curiosity. So I think that this one, even though it's about the troubles in Ireland, it's kind of history at the end. So I really liked that was the second choice. And then the third choice was No Visible Bruises. Also, I will put the author somewhere because these authors have very long names and I cannot remember. I enjoy all 3 of these books as well. My favorite to win was In the Dream House by Carmen Machado, but I knew that it was probably not going to win because it's a very different kind of non-fiction that borders with fiction, so I think a lot of people had troubles with that. I was still hoping that it will make it to the top 3. It didn't, but yeah, I still really like the other 3 books that were in the top 3, and Catch and Kill by Ronan, Farrow, and Solitary by Albert Woodfox, which were the other 2, I did not like as much, so they didn't make it to the top 3, and I was happy with that as well. So yeah, overall I was really happy with the results, even though obviously they were not exactly what I wanted. They were in the line of what I wanted, so I was happy with that. But yeah, if you have not seen the results or anything, I will put links to the Booktube Prize channel and everything below, because maybe I'm just talking and you're not understanding anything of what I'm saying. But yeah, with that aside, I also wanted to talk a little bit about my experience being a judge. I think overall it was a very, very interesting experience. Because sometimes you just read books and it's like, yeah, this is good, this is bad, but you don't really critically think about them so much, and judging a prize makes you think more critically about them, and because you are forced to rank them, you have to compare them, and sometimes it's really hard, but I think it is a very interesting exercise to compare certain books and see what that you come out with. I personally found non-fiction a lot easier to judge than fiction, because even though both can have different topics and stuff, I think that non-fiction has more clear lines of what you can value. Like, you can value if a book is thoroughly researched and if it's easy to read, if the structure makes sense. Those are things that you expect in a non-fiction and things that you can judge it by, and maybe it's because I'm used to academic writing, so it is easier for me to say what a non-fiction, which non-fiction is good and which non-fiction is bad. Whereas in fiction, sometimes it's more subjective. Obviously, non-fiction is also subjective, but I feel like fiction is more subjective, because it's about if you connect with a book, if you connect with the characters, and things that I don't like in books, like certain plots, lines, or certain devices of dual timeline or whatever, someone might really love and someone might really hate, and that's not a fault of the book. And I personally try to sometimes be objective about that and think about the merits of the book. And there were books that you admire but you don't really like, and there are books that you love, and there are books that are just okay, right? So then I try to take all of those things into consideration, and not just if I like the book or not. And that was sometimes hard. I know that some judges have systems and they have a certain categories in which they give points to, so like character development, plot, enjoyment, all kinds of things. I did not do that because I think that not all of these things are equally important in all books. Some books do not try to do character development, so it is unfair to judge them on character development. That was not the point of the book. So in that sense, I had a bit of more of a fluid approach to it, but every judge is free to do the judging however they want, which I think it's very good, because I don't think that there is one system that will work equally well for all of the judges. And some people just judge them on if they enjoyed it or not, which is also a completely valid way to do it. And what I like about the Booktube Prize is that because there are many judges that give these impressions, at the end you kind of have an average of all the different approaches into these rankings, which I think it's a very fair way to do it for the books, because it takes into consideration all the different ways that readers approach books. So yeah, I think that that was a very interesting experience for me. I also liked that I was obviously not judging alone. I was judging at the same time as other people, so I was reading these books at the same time as other people, and even though we were not allowed to talk about the books before the winners of the round were announced, once the winners were announced, there were all this flood of videos of these books that I had just read. And it's almost like a buddy read in a way, and you talk with these people about the different rankings that they had compared to mine and what we liked and didn't like about these books. And I think that makes the whole process a lot more interactive, because you have all these judges you can talk to about books you just read. So I really like that community feeling that it builds into the judges. I have to say though, there were also some negatives. There were books that I read that I didn't really enjoy, and having to read 6 books in a space of 2 months, it is a commitment. Especially, I read quite a lot, but I know that people read less. If you read like 6 or 7 books a month, reading 3 of them for the Booktube Prize, it is quite a commitment. And I personally felt it, especially at the end, because at the beginning I was super excited, so I was reading the books immediately after I got the lists. But after a while, also because of the pandemic, maybe books were not as available, or I was just not as motivated because, well, I think we have all struggled during these lockdown periods to find our motivation sometimes. So that happened. I don't know if I would feel different about it if we would not have had a pandemic. If my interest would have stayed the same, but I also sometimes struggle with very long projects to keep motivated. I think my prime attention span for any project tends to be between 2 and 4 weeks. So this was a longer project, and sometimes I did have struggle with my motivation, but overall I think that seeing all the people excited made me also excited, and I finished all of my books within the allotted time. I usually put my ballot in a few days before the deadline, because I'm that kind of person. But yeah, I think that overall it was a great experience. And even though there were books I didn't like, I'm still glad I read them, because otherwise I will get FOMO. I was talking to Courtney from Courtney Ferriter, I will also link her channel below, about the fact that you have to read these books even if you don't like them. And she was saying that she's doubting to become a judge because of that. But I have to say that you do not have to judge all of the rounds. You can choose which rounds you judge. And after the second round, normally these books have gone through a process. So they tend to be fairly good books. Even if you don't like them, you can tend to recognize the value of those books. So I think that if you are worried about that, maybe you can choose not to judge all of the rounds and just choose and pick whichever fits you best. So I decided to judge all of them, partly because of FOMO, partly because I'm a completionist, and partly because at the beginning I was really excited and I wanted to do all of the things, and that is usually what happens to me, and then I get too many projects. But that's a different topic. But yeah, so I think that you can tailor the experience to what you want to get out of it. I have to say also that I liked that I could judge all of the rounds, because at the beginning it was a bit easier to rank the books, because there were clearly ones that were better than others, so it was easier for me to rank them. And in the later rounds I did have the experience, so it was easier for me to decide how to rank them, and had cemented my criteria on how to rank them. If you start with books like that in the finals that are all very good, you might struggle more with the ranking system that you want to use, because you have not done that before. So you might struggle to find your ground on how to rank these books if they are all good. And it's better to have a little bit of experience with books that were not as good. So yeah, even though I think that you can, if you're scared of reading a bunch of books you didn't like, you might start with the finals or semi-finals, but take into account also that it is nice to have a cemented way to judge books before you get there. Yeah. And I also have to say that from all the books that I read, I think there were maybe 2 or 3 that I really, really didn't like, that I would have DNF'd it was not for the Booktube Prize. So I read quite a bit of books, so having like 2 or 3 that I really didn't like, I think it's not that bad of a ratio. Also, normally when you when you judge the first round, some of those books are going to come up again, so you will not have to read 6 books every time. I never had a round in which I had 6 books that I had not read. I think the first 2 I had 5 to read, and after that it was like the finals was 2 only that I had to read, and the semi-finals I think it was maybe 3 or 4. So even though you have 6 books to rank, it might very well be that you don't have to read 6 books. So yeah, that is another thing that you can take into account. And yeah, the last thing I would say is that some of these books, I normally do not buy books. I like to get books from the library, but because of the pandemic, but also because my library didn't have all of these books were published roughly a year ago, and not all of them are in my library yet, especially at the beginning, and especially the non-fiction ones. Fiction is much more likely that your library will have them. So I did have to buy some books for it. I think I ended up buying maybe 3 or 4, and then I got a bunch of them also out of script. So yeah, it's something that you also might want to consider if you normally read from the library, that all these books might not be available in your library. So it's an experience that overall I would recommend. Also, Robert already put the announcement for calling for judges for the next year, so Booktube Prize 2021. And I would, if it sounds like something that you might be interested to do, I would 100% recommend to go there and sign up, and then you can decide later which rounds you want to judge. I have already signed up for it, so I'm excited again, but we will see how it goes. So yeah, I hope to see you all in the next round of the Booktube Prize. Let me know if you're interested in signing up for it, or if you found my thoughts on it interesting and there are some more questions that you might have about what it is to judge a prize like this. And yeah, until next video, bye.